Joe Tate shows zero compassion next week as he ruthlessly instructs his team to tear down everything on the Butlers Farm land, even the memorial marking Holly Barton's burial site. His harsh decision completely ignores the serious assurance Kim gave to Moira during negotiations over the Tate takeover of the farm. One of the hardest parts of losing Butlers was that Moira also gave up the right to visit her daughter's grave. Kim had promised to respect and safeguard the memorial, allowing Moira to come whenever she wished. However, Joe shows no regard as he destroys the land along with Kim's pledge. An insider reveals, this is among the most despicable acts Joe Tate has ever carried out. And that's quite a statement. Moira is already suffering immensely, and discovering that Holly's memorial has been ruined will break her even further. She's currently stuck in prison for offences she didn't commit, but when she learns what Joe has done, she could be pushed to the edge. Anyone hoping Joe would show more understanding after securing the land, especially knowing about Cain's cancer diagnosis, is mistaken. Rather than showing kindness, he appears even more determined to upset them. He continues with his plans for the farm and has no hesitation in destroying the grave, despite knowing how deeply it will hurt Moira and her family and likely spark further conflict. His actions also completely undermine Kim's promise to protect the site and ensure that Moira could always return to remember her daughter. The question now is whether Joe will eventually face the consequences of his cruel behaviour once Moira is finally released. Joe Tate's shocking behaviour over Holly's resting place in Emmerdale is enough to leave anyone completely appalled. He's carried out plenty of terrible actions during his time in the village, but going after someone who has already passed away, that's a new low. It's hard not to feel deeply disappointed by the person he has become. At this point, it even raises questions about his fiancée, Dawn Taylor, who seems blind to his cruel and spiteful nature. Even Graham Foster is stunned by just how ruthless Joe is becoming. He was horrified to discover that Joe had opened a bank account in Lydia Dingle's name to frame her for stealing from Kim Tate. This scheme was driven purely by revenge after Joe found out that Kim intended to leave home farm to Lydia in her will. Lydia had done nothing wrong, yet Joe still made her suffer the consequences. There's no doubt that Joe struggles to accept defeat. However, his latest move isn't about Kim this time. Although he's also under suspicion for attempting to poison her with mushrooms, that's a separate issue altogether. Here, Joe is focused on pushing ahead with his takeover of Butlers Farm. He shows no respect for its history as a Dingle family home, or for the farming legacy built there by Moira Dingle. Instead, he is determined to wipe away any trace of their presence and continue asserting his control. As work begins, Joe gives orders for everything in one of the old fields to be torn down, including Holly's memorial. Holly, Moira's daughter, tragically died from an overdose. As disturbing as Joe's actions already are, they become even worse considering that Kim had personally promised Moira in prison that Holly's burial site would remain safe and untouched after the sale of the farm. Unfortunately, Kim clearly underestimated just how far Joe would go. A gripping episode focused on Charity and Cain airs tomorrow night, promising unexpected turns along the way. Emmerdale is preparing an emotional installment centered on Cain and Charity Dingle, and after recent events, tensions between them have reached a breaking point. The duo will take the spotlight in a special two-hander airing on Wednesday, March 25th, following a dramatic sequence of events that saw Cain lose his temper entirely. Actor Jeff Hordley has hinted that viewers should be ready for several surprising developments. Tuesday, March 24th, turned into a challenging day for Cain from beginning to end. He was persuaded to attend a prostate support group, but the experience quickly took a negative turn. The environment felt uncomfortable, and a remark from another attendee struck a nerve, suggesting his illness could ruin his marriage and push his wife away. This fear hit Cain hard, prompting him to leave before the meeting had even properly started. Later on, he headed to the Woolpack in an attempt to cope with his feelings, but things only worsened. Mackenzie shared that their plans involving cattle had collapsed, while Claudette's story about her brother dying from prostate cancer intensified Cain's frustration. The situation escalated when Sam arrived and confessed he had missed an important meeting about farm equipment. Cain reacted angrily, grabbing Sam in a moment of rage, while Sam chose not to fight back due to Cain's condition. Reaching his breaking point, Cain went home and turned to alcohol, but Charity soon followed, determined to break through his walls. She made it clear she wasn't leaving until he opened up, settling into Zach's chair and insisting he talk about what was troubling him. Cain attempted to brush her off and continued drinking, but when Charity urged him to take better care of himself, his anger erupted. In a fit of frustration, he hurled the bottle, smashing Zach's tankard in the process. A major shake-up on Emmerdale has left one of the show's stars feeling disappointed, as big changes reshape the storyline. Following the news that Robert Sugden and Aaron Dingle are set to take control of Butlers Farm, many viewers and former cast members have welcomed the return to the show's traditional roots. However, not everyone is pleased with the direction. Natalie J. Robb has expressed her frustration as her character was forced into a difficult position and ultimately had no choice but to sell her share of the farm to Kim Tate. With the Tate family stepping into a new venture, the Dingles remain deeply involved in ongoing drama. Moira is adjusting to life in prison, while her husband has recently been diagnosed with prostate cancer, adding further strain to the family. These developments have meant Rob has spent less time filming on the farm set, something she admitted has been particularly emotional for her. She explained that she felt disappointed when she first learned the news, as she has always enjoyed working on the set. At the same time, she acknowledged that change is part of the process and that the show is moving forward by revisiting its core families. She noted that this shift opens the door to many new storylines, even though it feels a bit strange. Despite the changes, she added that the current material being produced is strong. Having been part of the soap since 2009, she also spoke about her character's time in prison, suggesting that the experience will lead to a transformation later on. She believes prison will toughen her character, changing how she carries herself as she has lost everything she once relied on. Habits and attitudes that once didn't matter will now become more important. She described this as a kind of personal reset, saying that once released, her character will have to adjust to being around people again, which may feel overwhelming after spending so long in isolation and away from her usual life of chaos. Rob is not the only cast member to comment on the changes at Butlers Farm, as several former actors have also shared their views on the developments. Emmerdale continues to air on weeknights at 8 p.m. on ITV1 and is also available to stream on ITVX.